Battlestations Midway is a classic game for me, one that I played a lot of back when it first came out, but it's largely gone forgotten. I've always been really interested in the history and the depictions of the Pacific theater of World War II. On my desk at my office is a nanoblock set of the P-51 Mustang, and I just keep telling myself that I'm gonna buy and build a nanoblock set of the Yamato battleship. The obvious comparison to be drawn is to World of Warships. Steam says I've played World of Warships for 73 hours, but really I've played it for hundreds of hours through the Wargaming launcher long before I started playing it on Steam. And though World of Warships is really fun, it's a live service action game that lacks a lot of the true tactics elements that the Battlestations games included over 17 years ago. We'll get into those details in a moment. While at my local GameStop, I spotted a copy of Battlestations Midway and I just had to snag it and play through it immediately. Battlestations Midway is the first of two games in the Battlestations franchise. Developed by Eidos Hungary and published by Eidos Interactive, Battlestations Midway's development began in 2002 under the name of Midway Naval Battles, with an anticipated release date in 2004. As the publishing rights changed hands during development, Midway Naval Battles was rebranded as Battlestations Midway, and in 2004 it was announced that the game would release in 2005. The game would further be delayed as the team canceled versions for the PlayStation 2, original Xbox, and for the Gizmondo.
What is that? What the f*** is that?
So I actually had to look up what the Gizmondo was because I have no memory of this thing ever existing. Apparently, it was a handheld console released in March of 2005 that sold less than 25,000 total units. It was priced at a ridiculous $400, twice the cost of the Nintendo DS that released just a couple months prior. So yeah, no wonder this thing failed. Seriously, the story behind the Gizmondo though, it's insanely fascinating. The story includes one of the executives wrecking a $1 million Ferrari Enzo at 200 miles per hour, cutting the vehicle in half, and somehow the guy survived. You should go check out this video from LGR going over all the wild details of how the Gizmondo came and went. I put a link in the description below. In December of 2006, journalists were invited aboard the Royal Navy's HMS Belfast to participate in a demo presentation for the upcoming game. I can't tell if this is an awesome flex or just some annoying marketing PR, but either way, I bet the presentation was riveting. Battlestations Midway was released for the Xbox 360 and PC on January 30th of 2007. It received pretty average reviews. It would go on to reportedly sell around 900,000 copies across both platforms, which I think many would consider to be a moderate success. Set in the Pacific theater of World War II, the game features a story campaign for the American Navy. It starts with the bombing of Pearl Harbor and it concludes at the US victory at Midway. There are also several challenge missions available for testing your skills and earning a top score, and there's also a multiplayer mode. Strangely, there's no skirmish option to allow you to jump into a map against the AI. Battlestations Midway is a unique blend of real-time tactics and action gameplay elements. The player commands ships and squadrons of planes to execute orders. Orders can be issued from the map view, and there's even a waypoint system allowing you to direct your units to travel at specific angles. The player can also take control of the units to sail or fly around and engage in combat for themselves. It's one of the few real-time strategy games that allows the player to control the individual units. There's an assortment of warships and planes to be controlled. There are recon planes, fighter planes, dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fortress bombers like the B-17.
B-17 bomber.
This is where the game has some great attention to detail. Planes can only hold one payload. Once spent, they have to return to an airfield or to an aircraft carrier in order to restock. For torpedo bombers, if you drop the payload for more than 1,000 feet, 300 meters for my metric friends, the torpedo will explode upon impact with the water. It's really important to make sure you fly low, lead your shot, and let the torpedo travel to impact. Dive bombs, on the other hand, those can be a little bit tricky to pull off. A proper dive bomb involves flying just past the enemy at a high altitude, then rolling and pitching down and dropping the bomb at a sharp angle before pulling up to make your escape. If you don't fly far enough past the enemy, your angle will be too sharp to release the bomb. Fly too low and you won't be able to pull up in time to escape. You can also take command of PT boats, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, aircraft carriers, and even submarines. I'm not going to go into all the specifics about the ships, so if you want an in-depth look at all the mechanics, you should go check out the posts over on strategywiki.org. They have a ton of great info about the game that is documented and it's preserved for history. Unlike in World of Warships, In Battlestations Midway, repairs aren't a consumable that applies repairs to all areas of the ships. Instead, when your ship takes damage, you can use this menu to assign your 3 crew assignments to the part of the ship that you want to be repaired. The menu is really cool. It shows where your ship has damaged parts, and it includes this visual indicator of how much flooding the ship has taken. Even though it predates it by about 5 years, assigning crew members to repair specific sections of the ship reminds me of FTL Faster Than Light. Maybe I should cover that game in a future video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And let's be honest, the coolest thing to control are submarines. In addition to controlling the travel speed, you can also control the depth of the submarine. Diving all the way to crush depth will slowly deplete the HP gauge as the submarine's hull can't withstand the pressure for extended periods, but while down there, you're completely hidden from enemy sonar. The second notch is attack depth, the depth that's required to fire torpedoes or to use the submarine's periscope. There's an oxygen gauge on the screen showing your remaining oxygen, forcing you to resurface every few minutes to resupply oxygen. But when you do, you're vulnerable to detection and to enemy fire. The AI will do a pretty good job at executing your orders without needing you to control every aspect, but it does struggle pretty greatly with submarines and torpedo bombers. It's a bit too rigid in its execution, and it often overshoots when it's attempting to lead the enemy.
What are you aiming at? What are you aiming at?
This game radiates early Xbox 360 graphics. Thankfully though, this came out before the industry trend of browns and grays. Instead, Battlestations Midway is full of bright colors and there's a serviceable amount of detail. I especially like the way that the water splashes from gunfire and the flags are waving in the wind. The watercolors are also pretty nice and vibrant, and it's got some impressive reflections for the era. The ocean is incredibly dark and mysterious when you're controlling submarines down below the surface, and I really love the sounds, or lack thereof, when your submarine is traveling through the dark depths. For the sound design, there's a ton of chatter on the radios when the conflicts start.
Enemy air forces are inbound.
You'll hear units screaming as they're shot down. And when you're dive bombing, there's this sound effect that really helps to sell the feeling that you're plummeting at high speeds, and you'll hear the crew confirm that the bombs have hit the target. Overall, the game is just great to look at and to listen to. While playing it, I just felt like it was more enjoyable to turn off any music or podcasts that I normally have on while I play games and just look around and enjoy the visuals, or just listening to the sounds of the planes as you fly through the air. The graphics for this game are by no means hyper realistic. They're not going to set your PC on fire trying to render it, but it's just a great example of how stylized graphics hold up over time. The story follows Henry Walker, a gunner on a PT boat who ascends the ranks of the US Navy along with his pilot friend, Donald Locklear. The story starts out with the attack on Pearl Harbor, and it follows the real-life battles that took place up until the Battle of Midway. You don't get any control over which units will be on the map, but I guess if they're going to be sticking to the history, then I'm all for it. There's even a cameo of JFK commanding PT Boat 109 to really make the history buffs like me salivate. Cutscenes are used to break up the action and to deliver the majority of the story. The cutscenes take place before, after, and even during the missions. The facial animations in the cutscene, they're not very good, but it's still pretty decent considering this game came out right at the start of the Xbox 360's lifespan. There's no campaign for the Japanese forces. Instead, the Japanese forces are depicted during the cutscenes. I'm honestly still quite impressed with how emotional these cutscenes are. During the opening scene, the camera cuts to a Japanese pilot in his plane preparing for the attack on Pearl Harbor. It shows him looking down and reminiscing on a picture of him and his daughter. It's refreshing to see a humanized depiction of the Japanese forces of World War II.
This man had his own god and his own family. Why would he attack us?
There are 11 missions total in the campaign, and for length, it's just about right. You can finish the game in about a weekend, and you can enjoy your time that you spent on it. There's no ongoing live service with daily login rewards here, just a simple, enjoyable experience that can be counted in the good times column. The multiplayer allows for 4v4 in preset scenarios. There isn't a way to customize the scenarios or to choose your starting units. Instead, players can choose which group of units they will command. Most maps start with pre-selected units deployed already, One map though, the Battle of Solomon Islands, doesn't have preset ship deployment and instead allows each player to choose their deployments from the harbor. Only 2 ships per harbor can be deployed at any time, but once a ship is destroyed, it can be immediately replaced. There's a large stock of ships in reserve to be deployed, so matches could easily go on for over an hour. This map was actually used in the multiplayer demo that was available for free to download from the Xbox Live Marketplace. I actually still have it downloaded on my Xbox 360. I think I remember playing the demo's multiplayer more than the real game's multiplayer. According to strategywiki.org, very few players online spend the time to land their planes to restock. Instead, they'll kamikaze them into enemy ships so they can more quickly deploy reserves. Yeah, that sounds about right. For the PC version, the multiplayer was run through the GameSpy service. And with GameSpy having been shut down, there's no way to play multiplayer any longer. The multiplayer appears to still work through Xbox Live, but obviously there's no one playing this right now, and I couldn't trick any of my friends into playing it with me. 2 years later, in May of 2009, a sequel was released, titled Battlestations Pacific. Pacific would go on to flesh out the gameplay of Midway by nearly doubling the campaign length, adding 21 new units, and expanding the multiplayer. I might do a review of Pacific someday, but at least for now, I'll say that it's the far superior game. It's sort of like a double stuffed Oreo. Once you've had it, why would you ever willingly go back for the regular Oreos? The multiplayer for Pacific is still functioning, so if you and some mates are sitting around bored, just pick it up and settle in for a good time. If you're a fan of real-time tactics games, you're a history buff, or you're an enjoyer of warship simulators, you should really give Battlestations Midway a look. It's a fun and enjoyable experience with an appropriate length. There really is value in playing a game that has good gameplay and it has an ending. You just don't get that nowadays with every game employing psychologists to influence systems to fight for your time and your money. Battlestations Midway can be picked up on the cheap from Steam or for the Xbox 360. I got my copy for $6 at GameStop, and I'm glad I did. Hey, thanks for watching this review. I really enjoyed revisiting this classic and making this video. If you enjoyed this review, please consider hitting the subscribe button and let me know in the comments below if there are any other games from that era that you think I should review. With that, I'm Ice Cold Snake. See you next time.